On the island of Sodor, there was a branch line that never appeared on Sir Topham Hatt's maps. It curved away from the main line near the old quarry, vanishing into mist and dead trees. The rails were rusted black, the sleepers cracked like bones. The engines whispered about it at night when the sheds were quiet. They called it the old branch line. Engines who went down there didn't come back. At first, it was only rumors. A small diesel sent to collect forgotten trucks. A steam engine ordered to investigate complaints of movement on the line. Dispatch logs showed they entered the branch line. Nothing else was recorded. Their sheds stayed empty. Sir Topham Hatt insisted it was mechanical failure, or engines being scrapped elsewhere, but the engines knew better. At night, faint metallic scraping echoed across the rails, like claws dragging against steel. Thomas tried not to listen, until one evening Sir Topham Hatt gave him an order. "Thomas, you're my most reliable engine. I need you to check the old branch line. Just go as far as the bridge and come back." Thomas didn't want to go. His boiler felt cold despite the steam building inside him, but he was a really useful engine. So he went. The farther Thomas rolled, the quieter Sodor became. Birds stopped singing. The air thickened, oily and wrong. His lamp barely pierced the fog ahead. Then he heard it. Click, clack, screech! Something moved beside the tracks. Thomas slowed, his wheels trembling. Out of the mist crawled an engine, but it wasn't like any engine Thomas had ever seen. Its body was stretched and twisted, metal bent into long, jointed limbs that stabbed into the ground like spider legs. Its face was cracked porcelain, eyes sunken and glowing faintly red. Pipes writhed along its sides like veins. It didn't use rails. It crawled. The spider engine tilted its head, metal joints popping. "Another one," it whispered, its voice layered with the echoes of missing engines. Thomas screamed as he blew his whistle and reversed as fast as he could. The spider engine lunged. Its legs wrapped around the tracks, tearing sleepers apart as it chased him. The rails buckled under its weight. Thomas raced toward the bridge. The old, decaying bridge no engine trusted anymore. Behind him, the spider engine shrieked. "You don't leave the branch line!" The bridge began to collapse as Thomas crossed it. Wood snapped. Steel cables screamed. The spider engine leapt after him, claws sinking into the bridge as it fell into darkness below. Thomas barely made it. Ahead of him, where the bridge should have ended, stood something impossible. Two glowing golden buffers shimmered in the fog, humming softly. Thomas had no time to think. He slammed into them. Instead of crashing, light swallowed him whole. When Thomas opened his eyes, he was somewhere else entirely. The rails gleamed silver. The air felt warm and alive. In the distance, engines moved freely, smiling. Engines that had gone missing. "The magic railroad," Thomas whispered. A gentle voice echoed through the rails. "You were brave, Thomas. That is why you escaped." Behind him, far away beyond the mist, something screamed in frustration as the old branch line sealed itself shut once more. Thomas was returned to Sodor by morning. Sir Topham Hatt said the branch line had collapsed permanently. But sometimes, late at night, Thomas hears it again. Metal claws scraping steel, waiting for another engine to wander too far. Once there was a young boy named Sam who loved Thomas and Friends. He had watched every episode, played with every toy, and spent countless hours fantasizing about the engines and their adventures. But one day he stumbled upon something that would forever change the way he saw the world of Sodor. It all started when Sam found an old VHS tape in his attic. The tape was unlabeled, old and covered in dust, as if it had been hidden away for years. Curious, Sam popped it into his VCR, thinking it was just another one of those old episodes his parents had recorded for him. But what he saw was anything but familiar. The episode began like any other. Thomas puffing down the tracks on a sunny day, with the usual cheerful music in the background. He was heading towards the famous Great Waterton Station, a place that had always intrigued Sam. He had seen the location before in various Thomas episodes, but he never knew much about it. As Thomas pulled up, however, something was different. The scene at Great Waterton seemed darker than usual. The sky was a dull gray, and the wind howled ominously through the trees. As Thomas approached the station, there was a low growl, a sound unlike anything Sam had ever heard in the show. Suddenly, from the shadows, something emerged. It was not supposed to be there. The creature had long, twisted limbs, each one ending in sharp, bony fingers. Its body was a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and shadow, with a mouth that stretched wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The creature's eyes were hollow, like deep voids staring into Thomas. Sam froze as the creature lunged at Thomas, and for the first time, the cheerful blue engine seemed terrified. "Run, Thomas," Sam whispered, though he knew Thomas couldn't hear him. The engine sped away, but the creature was fast, its bony limbs scraping against the ground as it pursued Thomas through the eerie, forgotten parts of Waterton. Thomas puffed desperately, his usual bravery replaced by sheer terror. The creature's growls grew louder, the sound reverberating in Sam's chest. The next scene transitioned abruptly, the camera shaking as it showed a group of troublesome trucks speeding along a rickety track. The trucks were headed straight toward a large tower, a landmark Sam recognized. The scene cut to a shot of a young girl standing near the base of the tower, looking up in wonder. Her innocent smile quickly turned to horror as the trucks, with mindless force, crashed into the tower, sending it crumbling down upon her. The girl's screams were muffled by the deafening crash, but Sam could see enough. The tower fell on her, crushing her in a grotesque, gory fashion. Her body was mangled, the scene too disturbing for a children's show. Sam felt his stomach turn, unsure if this was a twisted nightmare or some kind of warped, deleted scene. He wanted to stop the tape, but couldn't. He had to see what happened next. The final scene played out as Thomas, now even more fearful, entered Morgan's mine. But this wasn't the Morgan's mine Sam had seen before. The walls were no longer the usual gray rock, but had transformed into pulsating, fleshy masses. As Thomas moved further into the mine, he could hear soft, wet sounds echoing around him. The walls seemed to breathe, and then claws, thin, elongated hands reached from the walls, trying to grab Thomas. The more Thomas tried to escape, the more the walls seemed to close in on him, the claws growing sharper, more desperate to pull him into the darkness. Sam could barely breathe as the mind seemed to twist and contort in ways that were both surreal and horrifying. The once vibrant world of Sodor was now a nightmarish place where engines were hunted by strange creatures, and even Thomas seemed helpless. The camera lingered on Thomas's frightened face, his eyes wide with terror as he sped through the fleshy labyrinth, desperately trying to break free. Then the scene ended. The screen flickered and went black, the words "End" slowly appearing in distorted text. Sam's heart raced. He wanted to rewind it, to understand what he had just witnessed, But the tape wouldn't play anymore. It was as if the episode had vanished into the void. But that wasn't the end of it. Every time Sam watched Thomas and Friends after that night, something was off. At first it was subtle, an unsettling shadow behind Thomas in the background, or a strange, low growl that seemed out of place. Then the creature appeared again, lurking in the corners of the frame. In one episode, it was just a blur in the distance, but in another, it was much closer. Sometimes the girl's mangled form would flash on the screen, her twisted face staring out from the rubble, her eyes wide open in eternal horror. But the most disturbing change was in Thomas. Whenever the camera focused on him, his usual cheerful face was replaced with one of fear, his eyes darting nervously as if looking for something, someone that he couldn't escape. Sam couldn't explain it, but every time he watched, the world of Thomas and Friends became darker, more twisted. The creatures from the forgotten episode followed him into every new viewing, the flesh-covered mind lurking behind every turn. And Thomas was always scared. One day, Sam decided to stop watching, but no matter how much he tried, the lost episode seemed to follow him, creeping into the world of Sodor whenever he least expected it. And whenever Thomas smiled, Sam couldn't help but notice the fear behind his eyes, the hint of something ancient and horrifying watching from the shadows. It was as though the creature had never truly left. It all started when I found the mysterious VHS tape in a dusty corner of a thrift store. The tape was unlabeled, save for a handwritten scrawl that read, "Thomas Lost Episodes, Season 1 to 7. Curious, I bought it without hesitation. I had been a fan of Thomas and Friends since childhood, and the idea of seeing lost episodes fascinated me. The moment I popped the tape into the VCR, I was transported back to a simpler time, when Thomas and his friends ruled the rails in peaceful harmony. But these episodes weren't the ones I remembered. Episode 1, Thomas and the Shadows of the Past. The episode began as usual, with Thomas puffing along the tracks with his cheerful whistle. However, there was an eerie tension in the air. Something was off. The skies were overcast, and there was a strange, unsettling hum in the background. As Thomas approached the station, the camera zoomed in on his face, but instead of his usual cheerful expression, his eyes were wide with fear. "Something's wrong," Thomas muttered, looking around nervously. Then the screen flickered. The scene shifted abruptly to a flashback, an image of a massive, dark figure looming over Thomas. The Diesel, the same engine who had tormented him long ago. The shadowy form of Diesel appeared in the distance, its eyes glowing red as it slowly began to chase Thomas down the tracks. Just as Diesel was about to catch him, the episode cut to black. The camera zoomed in on Thomas's face, his eyes wide in terror, as he screamed. The screen remained silent for a few moments before a distorted, haunting voice whispered, "You can't escape your past, Thomas." Suddenly, the screen flashed back to the present, but Thomas was no longer on Sodor. He was on a dark, abandoned railway line, with dilapidated trains scattered along the tracks. A low, guttural growl echoed from the shadows. Thomas's wheels spun wildly, but the tracks kept turning into a tunnel of darkness. A distant figure emerged from the shadows. It was Diesel, but it wasn't just Diesel anymore. His body was twisted and grotesque, his face distorted into a horrific mockery of the engine Thomas once knew. The last frame was a close-up of Thomas's face, frozen in pure terror, as the camera cut off abruptly. Episode 2, The Haunting of James. This episode started innocently enough, with James boasting about how shiny his paint was, but soon things took a dark turn. The camera lingered on his face, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a flicker of dread. The next scene showed James in an unfamiliar, foggy part of the railway. Suddenly, a train with long black tendrils emerging from the tracks appeared before him. Its eyes glowed an unnatural green, and as it pulled closer, James screeched, "No, not this! Not again!" The train that appeared was not like any engine I'd seen before. It was an urban legend, a creature from Japanese folklore known as demon train or Oiwa's train, a spectral engine that consumed souls. It had no face, just a massive, gaping mouth filled with rows of sharp teeth. The train lunged at James, who desperately tried to escape, but his paint began to melt, revealing his steel frame beneath. "James, you're not so special anymore," a voice whispered, barely audible. James tried to flee, but the demon train chased him down the tracks. The final shot showed James being devoured whole, his screams cutting off abruptly as the screen cut to black. Episode 3. The Nightmares of Gordon. The third episode was even worse. Gordon, as proud as ever, was pulling the express, but something was wrong. The tracks seemed to stretch on forever, and the atmosphere grew darker with each passing second. The train's wheels began to squeal as if they were being ground against the rails. Gordon's face contorted with fear as shadows gathered around him. In the distance, I saw a figure, the Oni engine, a demon from Japanese mythology with large curved horns and glowing sinister eyes. Gordon's breathing became shallow as the Oni engine grew closer, but no matter how fast he tried to go, it kept following him. With each attempt to flee, the Oni engine's grip on his soul tightened. It wasn't long before Gordon's powerful voice turned into a scream as the Oni engine began to swallow him piece by piece, until all that was left was an empty set of wheels. Before the screen cut to black, I heard Gordon's voice, distorted, crying out, "I wasn't supposed to die like this." Episode 4. Toby's Dark Reflection. This episode started with Toby cheerfully delivering his usual quirky lines, but soon a heavy atmosphere settled over the story. As he traveled along a forgotten track, the usual calm and peaceful world of Sodor gave way to something far darker. The camera panned to reveal an eerie mirror-like surface in the middle of the tracks. Toby glanced at it, and his reflection didn't match his movements. Instead, it grinned back at him with a wicked smile, one that was full of malice. Toby tried to ignore it, but the reflection began to move on its own, pulling Toby's body into the mirror. The more he struggled, the more his body twisted and contorted unnaturally. The final shot was of Toby's face, frozen in a scream as the screen flickered violently. Episode 5. The Curse of Duck and Oliver. This episode was one of the most unsettling of all. Duck and Oliver were traveling together when they found themselves stuck on an abandoned track. Fog rolled in, and they soon realized they weren't alone. Out of the mist, a pair of eyes emerged, eyes that weren't friendly. A grotesque, horned creature appeared, with a body like a snake, but the head of a man, dressed in tattered rags. It was the Uri engine, a spirit of vengeance from ancient Japanese lore. The Uri engine chased them, whispering, "You do not belong here." Duck and Oliver raced to escape, but no matter how fast they ran, the Uri engine kept pace. Their faces were twisted with horror as they tried to outrun their inevitable fate. Just as the Uri engine reached them, the screen cut to black, with their final distorted screams echoing into silence. Episode 6, Percy's Silent Pursuer. This was the last episode I watched, and it was the most terrifying of all. Percy was hauling freight when a dark, twisted figure emerged from the shadows. It was a shadowy, monstrous version of Percy himself, with glowing red eyes and sharp, jagged teeth. The other Percy started chasing him, moving at an unnatural speed. The more Percy ran, the more his own shadow seemed to grow longer and darker until it consumed the landscape itself. The screen began to glitch as Percy's own demonic reflection continued to gain on him. As Percy's body was slowly enveloped by the shadow, the last thing I saw before the tape cut off was his terrified face. He whispered, "I can't escape myself." The tape's end, the tape cut to static, and the room felt unnaturally cold. I sat there, staring at the blank screen, my heart racing. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The nightmare engines, with their twisted forms and vengeful spirits, seemed to be lurking in the corner of my mind. I tried to throw the tape away, but every time I attempted to discard it, the tape would mysteriously return to my doorstep. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the sound of Thomas's whistle, but this time it wasn't a cheerful tune. It was a mournful cry, echoing through the silence of the night. And then, nothing. After that, I never watched another episode of Thomas and Friends again. Edward's Journal Driver of James, number 5, Red Tender Engine Log 1, March 5th, 1973. The siren screamed across Sodor this morning. I don't know why they didn't warn us earlier. Jonathan and I were shunting coal when the sky cracked open like some terrible firework. They say it's nuclear. I don't understand all that, but the ground shook, the rails glowed, and the world became fire. I helped James pull the last passenger car off the siding. We ran east, toward the hills, nowhere safe. The smell of burning metal is in my lungs. Log 2, March 6th, 1973. Everything is ash and silence. We're running low on water and fuel. The station is gone. Jonathan is quiet, too quiet. I try to keep him talking. James is tired, but he still puffs bravely. I tell myself that as long as I'm at the throttle, as long as Jonathan is at my side, we might survive. Log 3, March 8th, 1973. We passed a farm today. Nothing left, just skeletons of trees and the blackened bones of animals. James shuddered when we crossed the old bridge. Jonathan held onto the coal shovel like it would save him. I miss the sun. The sky hasn't shown its true color in days. Log 4, March 10th, 1973. I found a map in what was left of Tidmouth Station. Roads are burned away, towns gone, everything I knew is gone. There were other survivors, people, maybe. But I don't trust them. Jonathan says we can only trust the engines. James, at least, obeys my whistle. Log 5, March 12th, 1973. I think I saw smoke in the distance. Could be fire, could be another engine. My heart races every time we see movement. We can't risk stopping. We pass through ruins, through forests where the trees are black sticks. James's wheels click nervously. I swear he feels it too. Log 6, March 15th, 1973. We found an abandoned coal mine. It's shelter for the night. Jonathan is restless. He dreams of flames. I write by the dim light of a candle I salvaged. The world feels like it has ended. I hear rumors of things, people who aren't quite people anymore. Jonathan doesn't sleep. Neither do I. Log 7, March 18th, 1973. We're scavenging abandoned rail lines. So far, no signs of other engines. The silence is worse than fire. I keep thinking of Thomas, Gordon, Henry. Are they gone? Are they infected? James hisses steam whenever I whisper their names. We're being careful. Too careful, maybe. Log 8, March 22nd, 1973. Found a small town, half burned, still smoking. Jonathan insists we move through it quickly. Shadows move where they shouldn't. I caught sight of something with a man's shape, but the eyes, they weren't right. James shuddered, and I had to keep him moving. I think we might be the last engines, or the last few humans. Log 9, March 28th, 1973. Jonathan says we should find supplies along the old branch line. I agreed, though I don't like it. The rails are twisted, rails that were straight now bent like metal snakes. We're running low on food, water, coal, even hope. I try to write without shaking. James puffs slowly, almost mournfully. We pass over a fallen bridge. Log 10, April 2nd, 1973. We saw them. Thomas, Gordon, Henry, alive, not infected. My hands tremble as I write this. They were hiding with a group of workmen in one of the old coaches. It looked like a makeshift fort. Thomas's boiler whistled in relief when he saw James and me. Gordon just stared. Henry, I think he's scared like James is. The workmen are cautious, armed with whatever they could scavenge. We exchange signs. Hope is real, if only faint. Log 11, April 3rd, 1973. We spent the day with them. Thomas told us what happened since the blast. Gordon rages quietly about engines that went missing, taken by things he refuses to name. Henry avoids the windows, fearing what might lurk outside. Jonathan helped repair a coal tender. James feels better here, surrounded by friends. But I can't relax. The world is still broken. I write this knowing that the lines between life and death, friend and foe, are thinner than ever. Log 1, March 4th, 1973. The wind was wrong today. Even before anything happened, Sodor held breath. James complained all morning. Steam pressure, soot in his funnel, the usual. I wiped him down anyway. You don't ignore James. You can't. He remembers when you do. Jonathan joked about it while shoveling coal. My little brother never took bad feelings seriously. Just another foggy Sodor morning, he said. I wish it had been. Log 2, March 5th, 1973, 9:41 a.m. We were between Knapford and Wellsworth when the sky turned white. Not bright. Empty, like someone erased the sun. The blast came seconds later. Heat slammed into us. James screamed, I don't mean metaphorically. His whistle shrieked on its own, metal screaming as rails warped beneath us. The shock wave knocked Jonathan off his feet inside the cab. I grabbed him before he hit the firebox. Behind us, the skyline bloomed into a towering cloud. Not smoke. A pillar. Sodor had been hit. Log 3, March 5th, 1973. Evening. We made it into a tunnel near the old quarry. James barely moved, his piston seized, his paint blistered black. The red is gone now. He looks flayed. Jonathan keeps coughing. Ash fell from the tunnel ceiling like snow. The radio's dead. No signals. No voices. James won't stop whispering. I swear I hear him muttering between the hisses of steam. Too hot. Too bright. Make it stop. Engines aren't supposed to remember pain. Log 4, March 6th, 1973. We ventured out. Sodor is wrong. Trees are burned into skeletal shapes. Buildings slumped like they melted. The sea glows faintly at night. I don't like looking at it. We pass Gordon on the main line, or what's left of him. His boiler split open. His faceplate is cracked, frozen in terror. Rails around him fused into glass. He never made it out. Jonathan threw up behind James. James went silent. Log 5, March 7th, 1973. Jonathan's sick. Radiation sickness, I know the signs. Fever, shaking hands, burns that won't heal. He keeps insisting he's fine, but he can't hold the shovel anymore. James refuses to move unless I promise we won't stop. Don't let me rust here, he begged today. Percy's yard is empty. Trucks lie overturned like corpses. I found Toby's bell near the old tramway. No Toby, just the bell, ringing softly in the wind. Log 6, March 8th, 1973. James stalled near the coastal line. The sea fog burns your lungs now. Jonathan collapsed in the cab. I dragged him down, laid him beside James's driving wheels. James lowered his steam pressure to keep him warm. I didn't ask how he knew to do that. Jonathan asked me if Mum would be proud of us. I didn't answer. He fell asleep, holding my hand. Log 7, March 9th, 1973. Jonathan didn't wake up. James let out a long, low whistle, slow and broken. I buried my brother beside the tracks, using a rusted shovel and my bare hands. The ground is poisoned. I know that. But leaving him unburied felt worse. James hasn't spoken since. His firebox won't stay lit unless I sit with him, like he's afraid of the dark now. Log 8, March 12th, 1973. I see engines at night. Henry standing in the ash forest, leaves fused to his boiler. Emily's wheels half buried in glowing soil, still turning. James screams in his sleep, steam venting violently, valves rattling like sobs. Food is almost gone. Water tastes like metal. I don't think rescue is coming. I don't think anyone survived beyond the tunnels. Log 9, March 15th, 1973. James won't move anymore. His boiler cracked this morning. Steam leaked out like breath leaving lungs. I leaned against his warm steel until it went cold. I'm writing this beside him. If anyone finds this journal, remember us. Remember Jonathan. Remember James, number 5, who ran until the world burned. The sky is still glowing. I think I'll lie down now. Log 12, April 5th, 1973. The workmen have patched a section of track enough for us to move cautiously. Thomas, Gordon, Henry, James, Jonathan, and I slip through the forests that have turned gray and skeletal. The ground cracks beneath our wheels like the earth itself is screaming. We saw our first mutated engine today, a diesel, but twisted. Its boiler had grown strange protrusions like spikes, and its whistle was a scream. We kept our distance. James trembled. Log 13, April 7th, 1973. We scavenged supplies from an abandoned station, food, coal, water, barely enough. Outside, we heard screaming and hissing from the forest. Shadows moved impossibly fast. One of the workmen disappeared. We don't know if the creatures got him or if he ran into the wasteland. James hisses and shivers when the wind carries strange metallic groans. I keep my hand on the throttle, holding on to the fragile certainty that we're still alive. Log 14, April 10th, 1973. We tried to avoid contact with other tracks, but today we weren't so lucky. A train, maybe a tender engine like James, came barreling toward us. Its body was bent, blackened, with limbs like metal spiders crawling across its boiler. It didn't stop. We barely dodged, skidding over twisted rails. Gordon wanted to fight, but Thomas pulled us away. I keep thinking the ones we loved might already be wrong. Log 15, April 13th, 1973. Jonathan talks less. He shovels coal mechanically, muttering prayers I don't understand. We found a collapsed tunnel. Inside, shadows of engines hanging from the ceiling. Some burned, some gnawed like animals had been at them. I couldn't look long. James shuddered violently, almost falling over. I think even he knows. The world isn't ours anymore. Log 16, April 17th, 1973. We tried to rest today. Henry refuses to move more than a few feet from the group. Thomas seems determined, always peering down the tracks, whistling softly, trying to find a pattern in chaos. Gordon growls at every movement in the woods. I keep a journal because if I stop writing, I fear I'll stop thinking. The mutated engines are growing bolder. We see tracks that aren't ours, twisted, burned, or clawed into the rails. Log 17, April 20th, 1973. The forest is alive with metal sounds. Spidery scraping, hissing, something with wheels that shouldn't exist. We lost another workman today, Matt. Snatched. We barely escaped. James groans in fright. Thomas and Gordon drive with me on a narrow siding, barely avoiding a bridge collapse. The world beyond the rails is black and hungry. I write this by candlelight inside an old carriage. Jonathan sleeps fitfully, whimpering sometimes. Log 18, April 25th, 1973. We stumbled onto a station that's half buried in ash. Thomas found an engine. It looked familiar. Emily, maybe, but her boiler was twisted like a coil, and her eyes glowed red. Henry hissed. Gordon growled, but James refused to stop. We drove off before Emily noticed us. The waste has claimed everything. Every engine we loved, every friend, is a question mark now. I fear what's next. Log 19, April 30th, 1973. I write this with shaking hands. We reached what used to be Knapford Yard. I thought we might rest, but we were too late. Oliver, my friend Oliver, pulled himself above the tracks. His mouth, full of jagged teeth, opened unnaturally wide. Spider-like legs crawled from his sides, gripping the rails, pulling him upward as though he were some metal nightmare risen from hell. James hissed and trembled. Jonathan tried to back us away, but even the siding is broken. Thomas, Gordon, Henry, they watch in terror. We can't help him. We can only run. I don't know if we'll survive tomorrow. I don't know if Sodor even exists anymore. The world is fire, metal, and teeth.